So this
Hi.
is another one company's community talk, and I wanted to have Sarah Conti, a dear friend, on. So if I can't see who's on here, so if we lose me like we did last time, I'm sorry. So we'll try to get back on. But so here we go.
Okay.
So Sarah Conti is a dear friend, like I said, but she is also a licensed social worker. And I wanted to have this conversation with Sarah for plethora of reasons, but the two things I really wanted to get your feedback on, which we talked about prior to coming on, is just your feedback on have you seen anything like this happen in terms of what we're going through and how it's affecting individuals, family, and what kind of feedback can you give parents? I mean, we have people that have babies to kindergartners all the way up to college kids. So if you can just like I said, Sarah's had over 15 years of experience. So I'm sure you've seen it, heard it, done it all. So go ahead, Sarah.
Well, thanks for having me, Paige. This is really, it's an honor. And I think it's an important conversation to have. And one of the things that I've noticed as I have been reading the news, reading the paper, on various social media platforms, is there's a lot of advice and guidance for parents about what to do to maintain their own sense of mental health, to how to manage sort of the new normal at home, working from home, schooling your children at home, and managing the anxieties and the unknowns of this entire situation. But I've seen less about what to do with the questions that your children might be bringing to the table or might not be bringing to the table.
Right.
And that's hard to address in a short period of time. It's hard to address even in one household because many parents have children at various developmental stages. And so how you address one child is going to be really different than how you might address another. So I wanted to, have a little caveat bubble up here that says the number one thing to be able to address these concerns with your children is to follow the other advice, because it's a whole other talk, it's to follow the advice that you're learning and reading about in terms of maintaining your own self-care to really get a handle on your own anxiety.
Right.
It's inevitable.
Right. That's obviously, even before we came on, the juggling of, hey, I'll get to that. I'm working. I think the question that I have personally as a parent is the olive branch of extending the communication. I haven't necessarily, I'm going to be honest, I haven't necessarily done that and sat down with both my kids and gotten their feedback. What is that? Do I say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? I would.
Well, and it depends. No, I think you're not alone in that. I mean, I think a lot of us as adults don't know how we're feeling, right? We're panicked. We have the cognitive capacity to go to the extreme, to take things from 0 to go to 100 and to see how these various steps in this illness can affect us, can affect our family, our community, our country, and our world. We have that cognitive capacity. Children at various stages don't have it, but they develop it over time. So what we need to do as parents is identify our place of confidence and calm while we simultaneously address the fears of our children. And the trick there is to do that by validating their fears, but not sharing your own. And that's really hard to do.
Right.
So depending on the age. So if the child is small, they're likely not as aware, right? So we're talking like 6 and under.
Right.
Their routine might be different. They might be in daycare or preschool. They know that mommy and daddy go to work, that they go to school, and that their teachers are Miss So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, and then they come home and they get to play. And so their routine's a little bit different. That can disrupt things like sleep for children. It can it can cause some behavioral difficulty, some clinginess, but they don't have the language.
Right.
So for children that age, it's really about behavior, right? You don't have to bring up the virus to a child under 6 because they don't know a virus. They do understand germs if they're in some sort of a daycare, preschool. So talking about why we're washing our hands more, why we can't go to our school right now because the schools need to be cleaned for germs and that can take a while. And talking about it at like an age appropriate level.
Sure, because you're right.
Kids, kids slightly older, it obviously gets more complicated the older they get, right? And more in depth. For elementary school aged kids, they might, they have an awareness of what's going on. They're obviously not in school. They are in touch with their friends in various ways. And this started while they were still in school. So they were hearing things from their friends. And they might come back with misinformation. And so it's a parent's job to correct the misinformation and to say that you have learned from the experts.
Gotcha.
What is really happening, and that there are scientists who are really smart people in the world who are working really hard to learn about this. And my job as a parent is to find out that information. And when I know the answer, I'm going to tell you. I think that really helps. We need to take control as the parents, and we need them to know that we're doing what we can to stay informed, that they don't need to worry about finding it out.
Right.
We'll tell them.
Right. Right. Which is
my sidebar note.
Which is so cute, Sarah, because I think as parents, we innately want to answer that question and kind of get rid of that fear for them. And in essence, that's just kind of playing to ourselves and saying, all right, well, if I kind of shelf this by saying, it's going to be fine versus what you said, there's some really smart people out there that are smarter than mommy and daddy that are handling this. And when I know, you'll know, which, all right, I'm going to let you finish. It's such a great point.
No. Well, I think that that's a really important piece. And the other piece is that balance in the news. And this goes back to my that bubble about self-care, but I can't help but not bring it up.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm consumed, can get consumed by the news, and to the point where it's really not effective and not helpful. And it's important to stay aware and to be informed, but it's also important to find a place and a time to do that, right? So having the news on all day while you're working from home, while your kids are also even if they're in their rooms and you think they can't hear, they're sponges. And if they don't understand the words, they understand the tone. And we know the tone of the news is really intense. The tone of the governor's addresses, the president's address. It's really, and even our phone calls to our friends is intense, right? There's an intensity. So they're always listening, even if they don't understand what we're saying.
Yeah.
So that brings it back to just being mindful of how much you're watching, or if you're watching when they're awake, if you could do it when they go to bed, that kind of thing.
Right.
But getting back to sort of the age differentials, I think for elementary school, kids, again, they know about germs, they know about the flu, they know about passing illnesses on. And I think it's okay to use age-appropriate language about how this is bigger than a cold, it's bigger than the flu, it's affecting more people. And for all ages, bringing it back from like elementary up, bringing it back to what you're all doing at home to help protect one another and to protect the community at large by staying home.
Right.
And that gives everybody a sense of that they're helping, a sense that they're contributing to the greater good in this process.
Well, after I spoke with you about coming on, we spoke not at length, but enough that I was able to kind of address, one of my sons had asked, are we ever going back? And I said, basically, I don't know, because that's the answer. And he kind of looked at me, Sarah, as like, you don't know? And I was like, no.
What do you mean you don't know?
Right. But I was able to kind of say, well, when I do know from those people who make the decisions, you'll be the first one to know. Now, I kind of try to parlay that. My question to you is the impact this is having with the older kids, like, 7th, 8th, 10th, seniors.
Absolutely.
Like what
high school seniors, college seniors.
What kind of feedback would you give to those parents or even the kids that are watching right now?
Right. I think that those parents of kids like preteen and up have a really hard job right now. I mean, all parents have a really hard job right now. It doesn't matter if your child is a newborn or if your child is 17. This is really challenging for everybody. It becomes even more complicated in some ways when it's not as concrete, right? Children are concrete. We can address concrete needs.
Right.
When thinking becomes more abstract and cause and effect starts to develop, it makes it harder for children and for parents to sort of know exactly where they are developmentally. Do they get this? Do they not get this?
Sarah,
and so, you know,
1 second. Yeah. I have my dog now. This is crazy.
Okay. They can be difficult too.
All right, here we go. I'm back. Go ahead.
Just another thing that we have to, you know, deal and manage at home.
Well, back to your point, stressful this has been for those kids.
Absolutely. And so for teens, preteens in particular, preteens are like all about their friends, right? Even school for them is really social. It's about being social. It's not about history class. It's not about gym. It's about their connections. The most important, you know, socially developmentally things that occur for adolescents happens like between classes, et cetera. And then they're getting all of the, you know, they're getting all the juice of education in their classrooms. It's okay to validate. Well, you're not okay. It's necessary to validate how hard this is. It must be really hard. You must really miss your friends. This really stinks that you don't get to, that we won't be able to go to your dance recital. You worked really hard at that. And everybody who worked at this deserves to be able to celebrate how hard they've worked. Let's think of creative ways where we can do something to celebrate it. All the way up to high school. You know, I encourage parents of high school seniors who it's heartbreaking. They're heartbroken. Their kids are heartbroken. To get creative if you can. This takes extra work. It takes extra time. I mean, this is like one more thing for a parent to do, but it goes such a long way. Get creative with graduation, get creative with recitals, with tournaments, make trophies at home, take pictures, do Zoom award ceremonies, whatever, to try to include some of the celebratory experiences for them.
Right.
I would say also for kids in adolescents, even young adults, is to approach them, but don't corner them. Mm-hmm. And that sounds a lot, it's like, okay, well, how do we actually do that, right? So it's important to ask them what they've heard and what they know. So if you as a parent know where to start, just ask them, like, what have you heard? What do you know about this?
Right.
I have questions. Do you have questions? And I love what you did with saying, I don't know the answer to this. Right. And when I find out, I'll tell you. I think we can't instill false information to our children. And I think they need to know that we are paying attention. And, you know, I think we can also expect that teens they're going to be difficult sometimes right now. Well, all kids are going to be difficult sometimes. And you might see more behavioral stuff. Right. And sort of expect that to happen. And instead of you know, we're going to want to snip at it. We're in the middle of 6 things. We're on a conference call. You know, there's a baby crying. There's there's kids all over the place doing stuff, needing stuff from us. I think we have to try to be as compassionate and patient as we can and say, I'm feeling really frustrated. You must be feeling really frustrated too. Right. You must be really frustrated that I haven't done such and such for you yet. Right. Let's do this. Right. I think calling it what it is, right? Put it on the table. I'm annoyed. You must be annoyed. Chances are it's mutual.
And I think for me, that resonates so much, Sarah, is the fact that, you know, it's yes, I'm with your kid. I'm there. Like, I got nowhere to go. You know, the 4 walls of our house is getting small. I'm sure it's getting really tiny for my 2 kids who, you know, from the minute they wake up when they're in school, they're not home till later. They have activities. So it's like, you know, the sudden halt. But I also wanted to ask you in terms of, I mean, you've given such great feedback of, you know, from young age to, you know, even in high school, how to kind of engage and kind of I don't want to say connected, but like the understanding level of okay to be frustrated. And I
Absolutely.
totally appreciate that, because I tell my kids all the time, and a good friend once also said, like, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, that's how you're feeling. That's
Right.
how you feel. And I think it's like the validation. In terms of,
Right.
I have a husband and he could be really
Mhm.
annoying, and I'm sure I'm annoying to him, because both of us are I know I'm annoying to him. Both of us are working from home and managing.
Mhm.
How is it that we, like, as partners in all this,
Mhm.
without jumping to conclusion, or without trying to take his head off, say, I also need my space from you. Like, does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes,
I'm
absolutely. I
reading all
think
these negative things on Facebook, Sarah, like, when this is all over, like, the divorce rate's going to be like 1 million, and I just think that's just, I don't think I hope it's not right, but that just made me kind of think about the question to ask you.
Sure. Well, it's a great question, because I think it's at the foundation of how families can maintain some sense of normalcy, right? If parents aren't A, taking care of themselves, and B, communicating with one another, then there's no foundation for a sense of stability in the home, for a sense
Right.
of safety in the home, and for a sense of calm in the home.
Right.
So, I think the number one go-to sort of thing to do is to tell your partner what you need. You said before that it's both sides can be frustrated with one another, but you can't expect that your partner's a mind reader, and you're not a mind reader to what they need, and nobody. But nobody has experienced this before.
Right.
Nobody has been through this. So there is no, I mean, we can talk about this in these other areas, like we've never homeschooled before. We've never, we've never worked from home before, all these things we've never done, but we've never done any of this, including we've never partnered, a lot of partners have never worked from home and lived at home together, there's a small subset of the population who work together too. And they've had to work it out. And now, society at large is having to figure this out. And so I think the two recommendations I can give for that is to communicate what you need. Don't expect them to know, to guess. Ask what the other person needs too. You share what you need, but also ask him what do you need right now? Do you need a walk? Do you need a break? Do you need me to take the kids outside? Do you want to make dinner? And just so you can clear your head and we'll get out of your hair instead of everyone doing it together.
Right.
And then appreciating goes a long way, right?
Right.
Appreciating the small things. Thank you for bringing me coffee when I was on this call. Thank you for doing bedtime tonight. Just being thankful for it and recognizing that it's hard for everybody.
Right.
And, my family used to do this thing, and we used to get made fun of a lot by my friends. It was effective most of the time. And my parents would have us all come together for a family meeting. Mm-hmm. We were never in trouble at a family meeting. And that was important because if that was the tenor of it, then every time they called a family meeting, it's like getting called to the principal's office.
Right.
We would have something, but we just knew that if there was a family meeting, it was time to talk about something.
Sure.
And so in this instance, I think having, whether it's on the couch, around the table, in the backyard, whatever, everyone together to just sort of check in. And one of the things I think can be really effective, particularly if you have the older age kids, middle school and above, is to say, how are we doing with this? How's it going? This is new for us. We're in week 2. Some of us are in week 3.
Sure.
We've never done this before. What's going well, and what's not going well, and see if they have any ideas. Kids can be so creative and really pick up on things and be like, well, I don't want to,
right.
Who knows? I don't, what if, could we eat outside one night a week? Or,
right.
There are going to be some ridiculous requests too, that you're going to have to say, no, we can't have brownies for dinner every night. But there might be some requests that they have really good ideas, but that just giving them a little bit of that autonomy and letting them know that they're part of the planning of the family structure right now in this unusual time, I think could really go along.
I think that's so important, because right now everything's so uneasy. So it's just changing and it's fluid. And I know for me, with my kids, they need some sort of, at this time, we don't call it scheduling. We call it being flexible. Being able to kind of move back and forth. And again, it's one of those things that, my husband and I try to work daily, but I think it's, and we're going to try it tonight. It's just to have a family meeting and see what they say. I'm really, sometimes you ask these really kind of big open-ended questions, and I think, my kids are not going to understand or have any feedback, and all of a sudden it's, they are able to kind of surprise us.
Yeah, they might surprise you, and they can be there for one another. It depends on the ages and the dynamics of your children, but they can support one another if they know that one another are feeling a particular way. If there's a forum for them to talk about it, it doesn't have to be a really intense, like go into their room, sit on the edge of their bed at the end of the night and say, "So, how is it going with everything? It's so scary." That's only going to instill more fear. But really open-ended, asking questions, validating their feelings. You're right. This is really bizarre time. I think that at the end of the day, above all, if you take nothing away from any of this, it is continuing to provide reassurance and this unconditional love. And letting them know that you actually are enjoying parts of this, even that it's been really nice to have this time together as a family. We wouldn't get this otherwise. And as hard as it can be sometimes, and as stressful as it is, it's awesome that we get to like take a break and have lunch together, or go for a walk in the middle of a Thursday. Who gets, we never get to do that, or, do these projects in the house that we have said, we'll get to it, and we haven't had a chance. So I think that is the biggest piece. And if we can convey that in our actions and our language, then everything else sort of can fall into place after that.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, this has been so awesome. I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
You're welcome.
And
you're very welcome. It's important. And I appreciate you asking the questions. It's really, it doesn't come naturally to anybody because nobody has experienced this before.
Right. And it's one of those things that I felt for me, and call it selfish, that I was having that, what we talked about, that anxiety, and they could feel my anxiety. I could feel theirs. And for me,
and your stress and everything, of course.
I could easily put my emotion into words because I'm an adult, and, I could swear in a corner, but, to kind of release that. But I just saw it in my kids. But again, I hope whoever's watching this has gotten so much out of Sarah like I did. Please feel free to share this. But Sarah, I can't thank you enough. And one last thing, Sarah is a new mommy herself. So in the comments, please congratulate her. Hope you're
Yes, she's only 8 months old, so she doesn't have questions yet. So I'm
just looking at you like, what?
Yeah.
She's beautiful.
In a lot of ways, I have it easier.
Yeah. No, thank you. Sometimes harder. All right. Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.